All right, so we're going to be taking a deep dive into this whole legal revolution thing you've probably been hearing about.
Yeah, lots of buzz around it.
Yeah, and I gotta say, just from kind of skimming these articles and reports, it seems like there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I mean, this guy Rohan Michael Brown is like, he's being hailed as like this, legal revolutionary.
Yeah, it seems like he's found a way to really turn the tables and make the legal system work for everyday people.
Right, and not just, the big corporations and the wealthy individuals who can afford, high-priced lawyers.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is that he's not doing it through like protests or, political
Oh,
movements.
no violence.
It's more like he's using knowledge and technology.
Yeah, almost like a modern-day Sun Tzu.
Right. Like
Yeah.
he's studied the system, found its weaknesses, and now he's like exploiting those weaknesses to give regular people an edge.
That's a good way to put it, and it's interesting because, he's not a lawyer himself.
Really?
Nope, not at all.
So what, is he like a tech guy or something?
He's more like a strategist, a systems thinker.
Okay, so how does this all work in practice? Like what's his secret weapon?
Well, his main tool is this thing called the Self-Represented Litigants Guide, or SRL Guide for short.
SRL guide. Okay.
It's basically a comprehensive guide that's designed to give anyone, regardless of their legal background, the knowledge and tools they need to navigate the legal system.
So it's like a legal playbook for the average person.
Yeah, you could say that.
And I'm seeing this AI thing mentioned a lot too. Rodicator?
Right, Rodicator.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It kind of is, to be
Wow.
honest.
So what's the deal with this Rodicator? Is it just hype or is there something more to it?
Oh, there's definitely something more to it. From what I'm gathering from these reports, this AI is like nothing we've ever seen before.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me the rundown.
So basically, Brown created Rodicator as a way to test and refine legal strategies to a level that's beyond human capability.
Okay, how's that even possible?
Well, according to the Rodicator report, this AI has been trained on every single legal case, contract, and judgment in human history.
Every single one.
That's what they're claiming. Billions of data points, all fed into this AI.
So it's like having a legal encyclopedia on steroids.
Exactly.
And what are the results? Like, can this thing actually outsmart lawyers?
The reports claim that in every single test, Rodicator has defeated every lawyer it's been pitted against.
Every single one. That's a pretty bold claim.
I know, right? But the evidence seems to back it up.
Okay, so let's say I'm just a regular person facing some kind of legal issue. How would this SRL guide and Rodicator actually help me? Can you walk me through it?
Sure, so imagine you're dealing with, let's say, a contract dispute.
Okay, a contract dispute.
You would start by inputting the details of your situation into the SRL guide. It's designed to be very user-friendly, so you don't need any special legal knowledge.
Okay, so it walks you through it step by step.
Exactly. Based on your responses, the guide will then present you with a range of potential legal strategies, along with step-by-step instructions on how to proceed.
And that's where Rodicator comes in.
Right. Rodicator acts as your, co-pilot, analyzing your specific situation in light of all the legal data it has access to.
So it's like having a legal mastermind whispering in your ear, guiding you through every step of the process.
Exactly. And it can even anticipate how the other side might argue, what evidence they might present, and how the judge might rule.
This is starting to sound less like a legal revolution, more like a complete paradigm shift.
I think that's a fair assessment.
But how are traditional lawyers reacting to all of this? Are they like freaking out or are they embracing this new technology?
It's a mixed bag from what I'm seeing in these reports. Some lawyers are dismissing Brown as a charlatan, while others are recognizing the potential of this technology and trying to figure out how to adapt.
I can imagine there's a lot of fear and uncertainty in the legal profession right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is potentially a huge disruption to their industry.
So let's zoom out for a minute and talk about the bigger picture. What are the potential long-term impacts of this revolution? Like, could this really change the world?
I think it has the potential to. If Brown's vision succeeds, we could see a future where access to justice is no longer determined by your ability to pay for it.
That's a powerful thought.
Imagine a world where everyone, regardless of their income or background, has the knowledge and tools they need to navigate the legal system.
That sounds amazing, but are there any downsides? Like, could this technology be misused or have unintended consequences?
Those are definitely valid concerns and things we need to consider carefully.
Right, because with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. And that's something we'll be exploring in more detail as we continue our deep dives into this legal revolution.
Okay, so we've got this fascinating figure, Rohan Brown, who seemingly created this revolutionary system for understanding and navigating the law. He's built this AI that's changing the game and potentially paved the way for a future where legal expertise is available to anyone.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but how did he pull this off? Like, what's the story behind this legal revolution?
Well, that's where this timeline laid out in Rohan Brown's legal revolution becomes really helpful.
Okay, a timeline.
It breaks down the revolution into distinct phases, kind of like a roadmap to understanding how this whole thing unfolded.
Right. We talked earlier about Rohan Brown being compared to, like, the great strategists in history.
Like Sun Tzu.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe this timeline will give us a clearer look at how he was able to plan and execute this legal revolution.
Definitely. So let's start at the beginning, before the revolution even began.
Back in the Dark Ages, when lawyers ruled the world.
Yeah, back then, the legal system was this incredibly complex, expensive, and really designed to benefit those who already held power.
Access to justice was basically determined by your ability to pay for it.
Exactly. And for most people, that meant being at the mercy of a system they didn't understand and couldn't afford to navigate.
So how did Brown start to challenge this seemingly impenetrable system?
That's where his unconventional approach comes into play. He didn't try to fight the system head on,
Right, he didn't, start protesting or lobbying.
No, instead, he seems to have meticulously studied it, identified its weaknesses, and then created tools to exploit those weaknesses.
He outsmarted the system by understanding it better than anyone else.
That's a great way to put it.
So the first phase of this revolution was all about development and testing.
Exactly. Brown spent years, if not decades, creating the self-represented litigants guide and refining the Radicator AI system.
I can't even imagine the effort that went into that.
It's mind-boggling, right? I mean, analyzing every legal case in history, testing billions of strategies, and then building an AI that can learn and adapt at an unimaginable pace.
It does sound like something out of a science fiction novel.
It kind of does.
But the key takeaway here is that this wasn't some quick hack or a lucky break.
No, it was a deliberate and meticulously planned strategy, years in the making.
So he's got this revolutionary guide and this super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
What happens next? How does this revolution actually start to gain traction?
That's where phase 2 comes in. Release.
Okay.
Brown released the SRL guide to the public, making this wealth of legal knowledge and strategic tools available to anyone with an internet connection.
He just gave it all away. Didn't that undermine his own power?
That's what's so brilliant about his strategy. By making the information free and accessible, he simultaneously empowered individuals and exposed the weaknesses of the existing legal system.
It's not just about giving people knowledge, it's about changing the whole power dynamic of the legal system.
Exactly.
And this is when the revolution really started to gain momentum.
That's what the sources are saying.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but what about the lawyers? Surely they didn't just sit back and watch their profession get disrupted, did they?
According to the sources, they didn't see the threat initially.
They were too busy counting their money and sipping champagne.
Something like that. They were used to operating in a system where complexity and exclusivity were their greatest assets.
Right, they had a monopoly on legal knowledge.
Exactly. They didn't understand that Brown had effectively turned those assets into liabilities.
So, while they were busy charging exorbitant fees and relying on outdated methods, Brown was quietly building a system that could outmaneuver them at every turn.
It seems that way.
It's like a classic David versus Goliath story.
But with algorithms and legal strategy instead of slingshots.
I like that. So, what's the current state of play? Where are we now in this legal revolution?
According to the timeline, we're currently in phase 3. Revolution in full swing.
Okay, paint me a picture of what this phase looks like.
Well, individuals armed with the SRL guide and aided by Radicators are starting to win cases they never would have before.
That's incredible.
Traditional lawyers are scrambling to adapt, some embracing the new technology, while others are clinging desperately to the old ways.
And the courts themselves are facing unprecedented challenges as this balance of power shifts.
It's a chaotic but exciting time to be alive.
It certainly is.
The legal landscape is being reshaped right before our eyes.
And speaking of reshaping, in part 2, we'll be taking a closer look at the potential economic impacts of this revolution.
Yeah, because this could fundamentally change how we think about legal costs and access to justice.
I can't wait to dig into that. Until then, listeners, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unpack the financial side of this legal revolution and what it could mean for your wallet and your future.
It's going to be interesting.
It is. All right, so we're back and ready to dig into the potential financial impact of this whole Rohan Brown legal revolution.
Yeah, let's talk money.
Exactly, because let's be real, legal fees can be a major pain point for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A huge barrier to justice for many.
I mean, we've all heard those horror stories about, lawyer fees just spiraling out of control.
And it's not just individuals, it's businesses too.
Right. Like small businesses especially can get really crippled by legal expenses.
Exactly. And that's one of the areas where this report we're looking at, global legal revolution, financial impact. It really highlights some potential game changers.
Okay, so what's the bottom line? Like, how much money are we talking about here?
Well, the report suggests that widespread adoption of the SRL guide and Rodicator could potentially save individuals and businesses hundreds of billions of pounds annually.
Hundreds of billions. That's insane.
It is. It's a staggering figure, and it really highlights just how much money is currently being spent on legal representation.
Money that could be, invested back into businesses or, just put back in people's pockets.
Exactly, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, so there's more.
Oh, yeah. Think about all the costs associated with court delays and drawn-out litigation.
Oh, right. Those can be huge.
Massive, especially for businesses.
Absolutely, and not just financially, but also in terms of time and resources.
Exactly.
So this report is suggesting that the SRL guide and Rodicator could actually help speed things up.
Yeah, the idea is that by streamlining legal processes and making it easier for people to represent themselves effectively, it could lead to faster resolutions and reduced litigation costs.
So it's not just about saving money on legal fees. It's about saving time and stress and just overall making the whole process more efficient.
Precisely. And that kind of efficiency can have a ripple effect across the whole economy.
Right. Like if businesses are spending less time and money on legal battles, they can focus on, actually growing and innovating.
Yeah.
And if individuals aren't drowning in legal debt, they have more money to, spend on other things, which stimulates the economy.
It's all connected.
So we're talking about a potential win-win situation here.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, this report even goes so far as to claim that this legal revolution could boost global GDP.
Wow. Okay. So we've got individuals saving money, businesses operating more efficiently, governments potentially saving billions as well.
It's a pretty compelling picture.
It is, but what about the social and ethical implications of all this? Is this really going to create a more just world, or are there some potential downsides we need to be aware of?
That's a great question, and I think it's one of the most important things to consider as we delve deeper into this revolution.
Right. Because technology can be a powerful tool for good, but it can also be misused or have unintended consequences.
Absolutely. So let's start with the potential benefits, because one of the most compelling arguments in favor of this revolution is that it could lead to greater access to justice.
That's something we touched on earlier, but I'm curious to hear more about how that would actually work in practice.
Well, for starters, by making legal knowledge and tools readily available, it removes that financial barrier that often prevents people from seeking legal help in the first place.
Right, because for a lot of people, hiring a lawyer just isn't an option.
Exactly. They simply can't afford it. But with the SRL Guide and Rodicator, people could potentially handle their own legal matters regardless of their income level.
So it's like leveling the playing field, giving everyone a fair shot at justice.
That's the idea. And that could have a particularly profound impact on marginalized communities who've historically been underserved by the legal system.
I'm thinking about, low-income individuals, minorities, people in rural areas who might not have easy access to legal representation.
Exactly. Those are all groups that could potentially benefit significantly from this revolution.
And it's not just about, access to legal representation. It's also about empowering people to understand and assert their rights.
Absolutely. With greater legal knowledge, people are better equipped to navigate everyday situations, from negotiating contracts to dealing with landlord-tenant disputes to just knowing when their rights are being violated.
It's about giving people the tools to stand up for themselves.
Exactly. And that kind of empowerment can have a ripple effect across society, leading to greater civic engagement and a stronger sense of justice overall.
So it's not just about individual empowerment, it's about creating a more just and equitable society as a whole.
That's the hope, at least.
Okay, so the potential benefits are clear. But let's flip the coin for a minute. Are there any potential downsides to this increased access to legal knowledge and tools?
There are a few concerns that have been raised. One is the potential for misuse, like we discussed earlier.
Right, like what if someone uses this information to, spam people or commit fraud or something?
That's a valid concern, and it's
Yeah.
something that needs to be addressed through, education and ethical guidelines.
So maybe some kind of oversight or accountability mechanisms.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance between accessibility and responsibility.
Okay, what about the argument that this could lead to like an overload of the legal system?
The floodgates argument.
Right, like if everyone suddenly has the ability to represent themselves and file lawsuits, wouldn't that just create a huge backlog in the courts?
It's a concern that's been raised by a lot of legal experts, yeah.
So how do we address that?
Well, proponents of the SRL guide argue that it actually emphasizes the importance of alternative dispute resolution methods, like mediation and arbitration.
So it's not just about encouraging people to sue, it's about giving them the tools to resolve disputes fairly and efficiently, even outside of the courtroom.
Exactly. And that could actually lead to a decrease in litigation overall, freeing up the courts to focus on more complex cases.
Interesting. So it's not necessarily about more lawsuits, it's about more effective dispute resolution.
Right. It's about shifting the focus from adversarial legal battles
Yeah.
to more collaborative and solution-oriented approaches.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential financial and social impacts, but what about the human element? Like, how might this technology impact the relationship between lawyers and their clients?
That's a fascinating question, and one that I don't think has a clear-cut answer yet.
Yeah, it's hard to predict how this will all play out.
But one possibility is that lawyers could become more like consultants or advisors, guiding their clients through the process, but still allowing them to take a more active role in their own representation.
So instead of just blindly following their lawyer's instructions, clients could actually understand the legal strategies involved and make more informed decisions.
Exactly. And that kind of collaboration could lead to a more satisfying and empowering experience for both parties.
It's like shifting from a paternalistic model of legal representation to a more collaborative and client-centered approach.
I think that's a great way to put it, and it aligns with this broader trend of empowering individuals to take control of their own lives, including their legal affairs.
This has been a really thought-provoking discussion about the potential impacts of this legal revolution.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the financial implications to the social justice aspects to the evolution of the legal profession itself.
But before we move on, I want to circle back to a point we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
The question of trust.
Trust, right.
In a world where legal knowledge and tools are readily available to everyone, how do we ensure that people are using this information responsibly and ethically?
That's the million-pound question, isn't it?
It is, because like we said before, technology is just a tool. It can be used for good or bad.
Absolutely. So it's not enough to just make information available. We also need to foster a culture of responsible legal practice.
So what does that look like in practice?
I think it starts with education, promoting legal literacy, teaching people not just about their rights, but also about their responsibilities.
Right, like ethical decision-making and understanding the potential consequences of their actions.
Exactly. And it's also about providing guidance and support, making sure people know where to turn for help if they need it.
So it's not just about giving people the keys to the legal kingdom. It's about giving them a map and a compass and making sure they know how to use them responsibly.
I think that's a great analogy.
Okay, well, this has been an incredibly illuminating discussion about the potential impacts of the Rohan Brown legal revolution.
We've just scratched the surface, really.
We have, but it's clear that this is a topic with far-reaching implications, and it's one that we'll continue to explore in part 3 of our deep dive.
It'll take a closer look at the SRL guide and Rodicator themselves.
Exactly. We'll dive into the nuts and bolts of these tools and see how they're actually being used in the real world.
And we'll explore what they might mean for the future of law and justice.
So until then, listeners, stay tuned and keep those legal minds sharp. Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact of this whole legal revolution thing, but now I kind of want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, let's crack it open.
Like, let's actually take a look at the tools that are driving this revolution. You know, the SRL guide and the Rodicator AI system.
Yeah, time to lift the curtain and see what's really going on behind the scenes.
So first up, the SRL guide, we've talked about it conceptually, but what exactly is in this thing?
Right. Is it like a giant legal textbook or?
Yeah, is it something that a regular person can actually understand and use?
That's a good question. And Honestly, it's way more engaging and dynamic than a traditional legal textbook.
Okay, so what is it like?
I'd say it's more like an interactive roadmap.
Okay, a roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap to navigating the legal system. And it's got clear explanations, practical strategies, real-world examples, all designed to really empower people to use the law effectively.
So it's not just about understanding the law, it's about actually being able to use it.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that makes it so revolutionary, I think.
Yeah, because so many people feel intimidated by the legal system, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like this big mysterious thing that only lawyers can understand.
Right, exactly.
But the SRL guide, it breaks down those barriers. It demystifies the law and, it gives people the confidence to actually navigate it on their own terms.
Okay, I'm sold on the accessibility aspect, but what about the actual content? Like, what kind of guidance does the SRL guide actually provide?
So it covers a wide range of legal topics, from contract disputes and property issues to family law, employment law, you name it.
So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for your legal needs.
Yeah, pretty much. And it doesn't just explain the law, it also provides practical strategies for handling different legal situations.
Okay, like for instance.
Let's say you're involved in a contract dispute, right? The SRL guide will walk you through the steps of analyzing the contract, identifying potential breaches, and then building a strong argument to support your position.
So it's like having a legal expert holding your hand through the whole process.
In a way, yeah, it gives you that step-by-step guidance.
That's pretty cool. And I see it also includes templates for legal documents, right?
Yes, like demand letters, court filings, things like that.
So you don't have to start from scratch.
Exactly. It takes care of a lot of the legwork for you.
Okay, I'm impressed, but we haven't even gotten to the AI part yet, Rodicator.
Oh, yeah, Rodicator.
Wow.
That's where things get really interesting.
All right, so how does Rodicator fit into all of this?
Well, think of Rodicator as the brain behind the operation.
Okay, the brain.
Yeah, it takes all the information and strategies from the SRL guide, and then it applies them to your specific situation.
So it's not just a static resource, it's like an interactive tool that adapts to your needs.
Exactly, and it does that by analyzing tons of legal data, including case law, statutes, even legal arguments from historical trials.
So it's like having access to this massive legal database and this super intelligent AI that can analyze it all and come up with the best strategy for your case.
That's a good way to put it, and because Rodicator is constantly learning and evolving, it can stay ahead of the curve.
That's pretty mind-blowing, honestly.
It is. It's like having this legal super assistant by your side.
So are you saying that anyone with a laptop and this SRL guide could potentially, take on a seasoned lawyer and win?
Some proponents of this revolution definitely believe that's possible.
I mean, I know there are limitations, but it's still a pretty amazing concept.
Oh, absolutely. It's about democratizing access to legal knowledge and strategy.
Yeah.
It's about leveling the playing field.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the legal profession itself, because a lot of people are wondering, are robots going to replace lawyers?
It's the big question, right? Will AI take over the courtroom?
So what's the answer?
Well, like with most things, it's not a simple yes or no.
Okay, so it's complicated.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that AI won't completely replace lawyers, but it will definitely transform the legal profession.
In what ways?
For one, we might see a shift towards more specialized legal roles. As AI takes over those routine tasks, lawyers might focus on more complex and strategic areas.
So instead of handling every aspect of a case from start to finish, they might specialize in specific areas like appellate litigation or international law.
Exactly. And that could actually lead to a more efficient and effective legal system overall.
Another possibility is that lawyers might start using AI as a tool to enhance their own capabilities.
Absolutely. Imagine lawyers using AI to conduct super thorough legal research, to analyze huge amounts of data, or even to predict case outcomes with greater accuracy.
So it's like having this AI sidekick working alongside them.
Exactly, freeing up their time to focus on the more strategic and nuanced aspects of the case.
I could definitely see that happening. Okay, so we've got lawyers specializing, partnering with AI, but what about the everyday person who's navigating the legal system without a lawyer?
That's where I think the true transformative potential of this revolution lies.
Okay, how so?
By giving individuals access to the same knowledge and tools that were once exclusive to legal professionals, we're leveling the playing field in a really profound way.
So instead of feeling intimidated by the legal system, people could actually use these tools to educate themselves, to make more informed decisions, and to advocate for their own rights.
Exactly, and that could lead to a more engaged and empowered citizenry, with people feeling more confident in their ability to navigate legal matters and hold powerful institutions accountable.
I like that. But let's be realistic for a minute. Are there any potential downsides to this increased access?
Right. Could it backfire in some way?
Yeah, are there any risks we should be thinking about?
Well, there are always risks associated with any major societal shift, and this is no exception.
So what kind of risks are we talking about?
One concern that comes up a lot is, the possibility of an increase in frivolous lawsuits.
Right, because if everyone has access to this legal knowledge and these powerful tools, won't people be more likely to sue over every little thing?
That's the worry, yeah, that it could clog up the courts and drive up costs.
So how do we prevent that?
Well, proponents of the SRL guide argue that it emphasizes responsible legal practice.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, responsible legal
like
practice.
it encourages users to consider all of their options before resorting to litigation and to really think about whether a lawsuit is the best course of action.
So it's not just about giving people a hammer and telling them to go nail everything in sight.
Exactly. It's about teaching them how to use that hammer wisely and responsibly.
That makes sense.
It's about providing that context and those ethical guidelines.
Okay, what about the risk of misuse? Like, couldn't someone with bad intentions use these tools to exploit the system or to harm others?
It's definitely a possibility. We can't ignore that. But the developers of these tools, they've implemented safeguards to try to minimize those risks.
Like, what kind of safeguards?
For example, the SRL guide includes built-in ethical guidelines, and it prompts users to confirm that they're using it for legitimate purposes.
It's like a built-in conscience.
Yeah, kind of, reminding people to use this power responsibly.
That's a good thing.
But ultimately, the responsibility for ethical use does rest with the individual right.
Absolutely. Technology is just a tool. It's up to us to use it for good.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the Rohan Brown legal revolution.
It really has. Lots to think about.
We've explored the potential impacts, the promises, the challenges, and really gotten a glimpse into the tools that are driving this whole movement.
It's a fascinating story, and it's still unfolding.
It is. And while there's still much to be seen and learned as this revolution continues, one thing's for sure, the legal landscape is changing and the power dynamics are shifting. And whether you're a lawyer, a business owner, or just an everyday citizen, this revolution has the potential to impact your life in some pretty profound ways.
No doubt about it.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's all be part of this conversation as we shape the future of law and justice.
It's a future worth fighting for.
Absolutely. All right, that's all for our deep dive into the Rohan Brown legal revolution.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay curious and keep those legal minds sharp.